When it comes to my favorite franchises, I just can't seem to learn my lesson. NRS went from setting the standard of innovation and quality, games packed to the brim with content for single player, competitive, casual players, to releasing a title that's buggy, bare bones on standard features and tons of quality of life, and things that you should expect from a AAA studio in a fighting game in 2023. Not only are they missing stuff that's considered standard, they're missing stuff that they themselves introduced into the genre. It feels like every resource they had was put into polishing the story mode and the core gameplay mechanics to get it out the door in a state that wouldn't cause a massive backlash. And that's the saving grace. The core fighting mechanics and character designs are the best that NRS has done in years. It's bought them a period of grace, but can they fix, update, and add what's needed to keep players happy before that honeymoon period's over? Welcome to the Potato Backlog Project. I complete games from my 431 game backlog, allowing myself $5 per completion to go to the purchase of new and used video games. Mortal Kombat 1's the most recent purchase under these project rules. I make a video for each backlog completion and each new purchase, so make sure you stick around to the end of the video for the titan of all rating systems, the Tater Raider. And let's talk a little bit about Mortal Kombat 1. I love Mortal Kombat. I have since I first played it 30 years ago. The lore, the characters, the idea that mortals were chosen to fight to protect their home realms. I lived through those arcade days, the 3D game era, the 2011 resurgence and reboot. I've competed and traveled to play in tournaments. I think if I added up all my gameplay time throughout my life, Mortal Kombat is most likely my most played game franchise over all that time. It was important for me to note this first because I also think it's okay to call out and criticize something you love. Most of the issues with Mortal Kombat 1 are very apparent, but before I talk about them, I want to talk about the things that I love about the game, the things it does right, the reasons I have 50 hours clocked on the game and it's only been out for like 10 days, the character designs and core gameplay mechanics. Mortal Kombat 1's main mechanic or gimmick is the cameo system. Cameos work essentially like an assist or extra moves that can be used to complement your main fighter's core moveset. These were well thought out in terms of the movesets given, the abilities and what they can add to the core roster characters. It really adds a new layer of player creativity, expression, and gameplay depth that just hasn't been seen in any previous NRS games. This alone was a big risk for NRS, as assist-based fighters are generally not super popular among the casual fighting game audience, and Mortal Kombat 1 is all about the cameos. There is no 1v1 mode in this game where you can turn cameos off, but because there was so much good thought put into how the system worked, that's a good thing. The core roster character designs themselves are all excellent. Where Mortal Kombat 11 played it safe and generic, the gloves are off with MK1, and they really carved out unique designs for a good portion of the base roster. My biggest issue with MK11 was that every fight felt the same. No matter what characters were on screen, as a player and spectator, it was the same thing. That isn't an issue anymore, and it's the main reason the game's so much fun to play. You can tell there was real thought and care put into making sure everyone played unique and that players would be able to explore what worked for them, and pair that with a cameo to round out the playstyle that they wanted to use. These are giant wins for any fighting game. Feeling like you can create something yourself, discovering depth in the movesets and cameo combinations, and then applying all those things in combat. It works really well. NRS did manage to include their tutorial mode at launch, which is once again very good. I recommend anybody new to fighting games or wanting to learn more in-depth aspects of fighting games to go through it. They've also included combo trials for each of the characters, which can give you a hands-on idea of how the cameos can work within the mechanics of the game, so you can find your own combo routes and things that feel good to you while you're playing. The Mortal Kombat story was pretty good. I won't spoil anything here, but it was probably my favorite since MK9. It felt like a Mortal Kombat story. It wasn't the story of, oh man, things went bad, let's send in special forces. It felt magical and mystical. At the end, it went a bit off the rails and kind of felt rushed and strange to its conclusion, but overall it's a win, and without it, this game would not be worth the price. It's the biggest piece of content outside the core fighting itself. There are classic towers with arcade-style endings. These endings are all pretty good. The new single-player gameplay loop that replaces the crypt and towers of time is called Invasions. Invasions is a giant miss for me. Some people might enjoy this tedious grind and monotonous play, but for me it's just super bare bones and boring. It essentially boils down to AI fights where the difficulty increases by the AI getting super armor and being spongier and taking less damage overall. They try to disguise it as a level up semi-RPG type style of experience where you can craft things to get stronger, use a magical relic, level up your character, but all of those things end up feeling inconsequential. I'm 3/4 of the way through, I haven't used the relic, I don't pay attention attention to the damage types of the fights. I set my character to auto level up the stats, and I haven't died once. The maps are meant to feel massive and full of secrets to unlock, but it's style over substance. Something that looks like it should be cool, but offers very little actual fun. It feels like the basis for something that could have been very cool and deep, but wasn't given the development time to grow into that. Can you imagine Invasions mode where you find a secret and it's motor combat? Or even all of a sudden the callback to chess combat? So Jimmy, you said you love this game. You put in 50 hours in 10 days. What's the big problem? Well, I'm glad you asked. Polish, features, quality of life, everything you expect from a AAA full-price game in 2023. I'm not going to go super in depth on a lot of these things, and I'm not crying and complaining just to be seen. These are legit things we as gamers and consumers should expect from a AAA release and something that costs this much money. Keep in mind, these are features that either NRS themselves introduced into the genre or other fighting games have introduced and become the standard. Shoutouts to Curly Fry for tracking and sharing the list. In no particular order, you can't pin strings and moves from the move list anymore. Something NRS themselves brought in 10 years ago with the first Injustice game. A super handy feature for helping you learn the game and the characters quicker. The online netcode itself feels dated. The built-in 3-frame delay rollback that NRS implemented halfway through Mortal Kombat X's life is just not up to par anymore. Street Fighter 6 is now the gold standard in online netcode. No crossplay at launch. Even after having it in beta form for Mortal Kombat 11, this was a must. It should have been there. Overall online stability, desyncs, black screen of death, the online landscape is a mess right now. It feels like they're a good 3 months away from getting online stability to where it needs to be. Multiple input bug issues, with the most prevalent being the inability to press the cameo button and an attack button at the same time. In an assist-based fighter, this should be a thing you can do. Reverse walk bug, all sorts of strange, weird input issues. Can't be in training mode while searching for online matches. No training mode while you're waiting for your turn in King of the Hill. No Forever King option. No in-game option to mute other players' mics. The option's there in the PC version, but it literally just doesn't work. You can turn it on and it just doesn't work. In 2023, knowing the landscape, the online landscape, this should just be off by default. You can make the argument that players should know what they're getting themselves into, but I can make the argument that developers should make the experience good for all players. If you want to hear someone talk about your mother, you should be able to opt into that. Controller mapping bugs. This was an issue in previous games where your controller setup was not saved, so just a word of caution if you're playing offline or on tournaments, make sure you set it, save it, and do a button check before you play your match. No online practice mode. Although they say it's coming soon, a full price $90 game shouldn't have anything saying coming soon, especially practice mode. No online lobbies or rooms. Mortal Kombat 9 in 2011 had rooms, had online lobbies and rooms. It's 2013. No search filter by connection strength. No connection display in match, like ping, rollback frames. No option to change cameo or character within practice mode. You need to go back to character select. At the very least, they should make it so you can hot swap your cameo to save yourself some time while you're experimenting and learning the game. Practice mode options themselves needed an update and an overhaul. This is just a copy paste from previous games. No costume change or skin change options at the character select screen. No character based online ranking system. Combat League is essentially a copy paste again from previous games. Move list information very inaccurate, but that's always been a thing. Do we forgive it? I guess. There are some brutality and fatality bugs. There's a bug where Jax's cameo can stay on the screen. That's been there since the network test. But overall, it's just really disappointing. I don't accept the excuse of this is the way that modern games are. It'll get patched down the road. It'll get fixed. The game wasn't complete. Wasn't finished. And we'll never know the reason. We'll never know why. Maybe if they'd given us some kind of heads up, I could be a little bit more forgiving. But they pushed incredibly hard for our pre-order dollars. They held one of the storyline's main characters as a pre-order only bonus. You literally get to use that character in the story. But if you didn't pre-order this game, if you bought this game today, you have to pay more for that character. Looking at the first Combat Pack characters, at least 2 of those were held back from the main roster because they appear prevalent in the story. This is all speculation and we'll never really know, but it's a bad look. All that being said, I hope WB gives NRS the ability to support the game for longer than a year. It is the most fun I've had with a Mortal Kombat game since Mortal Kombat 9. But personally, they've lost my trust going into the next release. I can't see myself giving them money without knowing what I'm gonna get first. It's one of the reasons I started my backlog project, to get away from stuff like this. Buggy, unfinished games from AAA studios that have the money and the resources. I have have no doubt that the people working at NRS work their butts off, and they love making games. You can see the passion. Anytime you see them talking about it, you see it. But whoever's in charge of making the deadlines and making those decisions on when things have to be done, they need to be giving them enough time to finish the game and release it in a polished, pristine state that we've come to expect. This was a game that wasn't given enough development time, and it's embarrassing. Remember that the competitive fighting game players are a small fraction of the overall players that buy these games, and that player base is extremely happy with this game. But don't let them fool you about being unhappy about getting an unfinished game. Voice your opinion. As a gamer, that's all we can do. Speak with our wallets and let them know. 2 happy potato faces out of 5. Unless you're a hardcore fighting game nerd like myself, this game is not worth the full price of admission at this time, even with a really amazing story. Wait for the sale. The game will eventually be patched. The online stability, the game bugs, they should all be fixed at some point. It's pretty obvious we're not going to see any above the norm innovation with this game. At this point, all we can hope is that they just get it up to par with games they've released before. I play on PlayStation 5 and PC. We won't even mention the catastrophe that is the Nintendo Switch release that should be illegal, that they took people's money and gave them that. I should mention that there is cross-save progression between the games if you play on different platforms, but I'll also mention that that wouldn't even be needed if crossplay was a thing at launch, like it should have been. And with that, the Backlog project rolls on. Thanks for watching. Big shout outs to our top Tater member, Macho Migo. If you're interested in becoming a member and supporting the channel, click the join button to check it out. Be kind to yourselves and others that deserve it. We're on to the next one.